Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Banudari. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatera Banachari Ajamunatera Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Banudari. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatera Banachari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jai Nitya Lila Pravista Astatara Satasisi Manista Vangrace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Radha Shri Vasidi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Gopa Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kundi Ki Govardhan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Jeev Goswami Ki Jai Sri Jagadish Pandit Goswami Ki Jai Gauda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Jnana Tamaranda Syajanandina Shalakaya Chaksan Minitam Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha. We can easily understand that the Krishna consciousness movement is a very personal movement. Even our cows get blankets. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 13, text number 26. Tesham satam veda vetani murti Brahma vadayatma gunanuvardam Vinandya bohyo vibobodayaya Gajendra lilo jalam avivesha Tesham satam veda vitani murti Brahma vardaya yatma gunanuvadam Vinadya bhuyo Vinadya bhuyo vibudodayayam Gajendra lilo jalamavivesha Tesham satam veda vitana murti Brahma vadayatma gunanuvadam Vinadyabuyo vibhubodayayam Gajendra lilo jalamavivesho. Please chant. Tesham satam veda vetanamurtir Brahma vadayatma gunanuvadam Vinadyabuyo vibhubodayaya Tesham, of them, Satam, of the great devotees, Veda, all knowledge, Vitanamurti, the form of expansion, Brahma, Vedic sound, Avadarya, knowing it well, Atma, of himself, Guna Anuvadam, transcendental glorification, Vinadya, resounding, Bhuya, again, Vibhuda, of the transcendentally learned, Udayaya, for the elevation or benefit. These two words here, I think they're very interesting. Vibhuda, Udayaya. It can be either seen as those that are transcendentally learned, they bring about the elevation or benefit, or because they are transcendentally learned, they are elevated and get that benefit. Interesting combination of those two Sanskrit words there. Gajendra Leela, playing like an elephant. Jalam, the water. Avivesha, entered. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The form of the Lord in any shape is always transcendental and full of knowledge and mercy. The Lord is the destroyer of all material contamination because his form is personified Vedic knowledge. All the Vedas worship the transcendental form of the Lord. In the Vedic mantras, the devotees request the Lord to remove the glaring effulgence because it covers his real face. This is the version of the Ishopanishad. The Lord has no material form, but his form is always understood in terms of the Vedas. The Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled by Lord Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. The breathing from the nostril of Brahma caused the appearance of Lord Boar, and therefore the Boar incarnation of the Lord is the personified Vedas. We see this connection Prabhupada's making there, very simple. The glorification of the incarnation by the sages on the higher planets consisted of factual Vedic hymns. Whenever there is glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that Vedic mantras are being rightly vibrated. The Lord was therefore pleased when such Vedic mantras were chanted, and to encourage his pure devotees, he roared once more and entered the water to rescue the submerged earth. Om Ajnanatamadandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yanatasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachanam Pangum Lam Jayate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Sri Gurum Denitarino Vanchakapatirubhyastya Kripa Sindhu Bahevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Sri Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakti Vrinda. My only constant companion, my only friend, my guru, my wealth, that which has delivered me, my great fortune and the source of my good luck, the form through which I taste pleasure, my obeisances to you, O Srimad Bhagavatam. I offer my respectful obeisances to you, O Srimad Bhagavatam. By your recitation, one attains transcendental bliss because your syllables shower pure love of God. You are to be served by everyone, always, for you are an incarnation of Lord Krishna. As Prabhupada stated once, and I've mentioned this many times, it's one of my favorite quotes of him. He says, you cannot understand these subject matters, as he says, with your pea-like brain. With our pea-like brain, how much substance can there be in a little chickpea, compared to the substance in a watermelon? So if our brain is a little pea-like brain, how much can we understand? Now, for those of us on the devotional path, this is not so much a fact, but for those in material consciousness, the description of these various incarnations in the various different types of species, they're not impossible for us to understand. For those in material consciousness, it's very difficult for them to understand. We, in this august assembly, have already accepted Bhagavad Gita as our standard. And in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Opulence of the Absolute, Krishna tells how he can be seen everywhere in all the different elements, in the different species, in the different aspects of this world. And therefore, as devotees, we have no difficulty seeing Krishna's presence. What to speak of in the Dasavatar, in the different incarnations? But the Dasavatar is different than the description given in the 10th chapter of the Gita, in that these incarnations come for a very specific purpose. They have a particular, as we use the word lila, particular pastime. Thus they're described as the lila avatars, those incarnations that come with a particular pastime in mind due to the particular need at that circumstance. Now, here, of course, we're in this portion of this chapter, we're speaking about the boar incarnation, Varaha by name. Now, there are different Varaha incarnations. This is sometimes a little confusing, a little tricky to understand. But the different incarnations of Lord Varaha appear in different colors as well. Now, this is noted in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita of Sanatana Goswami. Lord Varaha appeared twice in one kalpa, or day of Brahma. He appeared during the Swayambhuva Manvantar from Brahma's nostril to rescue the earth. And during the 6th Manvantar, Chakshusha Manvantar, he appeared to rescue the earth and kill Hiranyaksha. The Swayambhuva Varaha is said to be white, and the Chakshusha Varaha is said to be red. So depending upon the particular time period and the particular necessity, the Lord comes, and he comes in different colors. I mean, this shouldn't be so surprising to us. We don't wear the same color every day. You know, my closet with my quarters will testify to that. So why would the Lord have to, he has to appear in the same color? Even we read later on that when the Lord appeared in this Varaha form, after, at a certain point, he transferred his form to the bluish form, Shamsundar. So the Lord's not restricted, you know. He has only one color. He can only, that's it, sorry, nothing else. No, he's unlimited. Anantava Rupam. So many unlimited different forms and unlimited different colors. I mean, we just see that in the beauty of the Shringar, the dressing of our Radha Shamsundar. Every day, so many beautiful different colors. And so what to speak of the complexion? The cowherd, I remember when I was at Brahmachari, you know, we were very, very excited about the fact that the cowherd boys all had different colors. And we had a reasonable sized temple. It was a small temple by many standards, but each of the Sankirtan devotees had different colored cars, and so we named those cars after the different cowherd boys. I remember I drove a green Pinto, which was, you know, despite being a Pinto, and that was the Raktak car, because Raktak's a green cowherd boy. And so like that, you know, the Lord and his associates, all, when we look at the Radha Krishna Gonadesha Deepika of Rupa Goswami, he describes all the different colors of all the associates of the Lord. You know, I mean, here in this room, we have so many different shades of different colors, dark colors, light colors, tan colors, beige, so on like that. So why should we think in the spiritual world, it's all just one? No, unlimited variations, unlimited varieties. Whatever color you can think of, it's there in some form in the spiritual world. Some of the cows even have multiple colors. So at any rate, the point being that therefore we shouldn't think the Lord in this incarnation of Varaha is just restricted. Now, it's worth noting in this purport that Prabhupada says that Varaha entered the waters to save the submerged earth. Also in the previous text 16, Maitreya notes that Brahma observed that the earth was merged into the waters, and that's why his concern and ultimate manifestation for facilitating Lord Varaha's appearance there. So clearly in these two descriptions, we have the earth underwater. Now, sometimes we see paintings of Lord Varaha and the earth is floating on top of the water. So we should understand that that pastime where the earth is on top of the water takes place after he has saved the earth. He transfers his potency to the earth to be able to float on the ocean so that he can now give his attention to battling with and dispensing the demon Hiranyaksha. Now, clear understanding of the timeline, we can say, of this pastime here. Now, it's worth noting that Lord Vishnu, Lord Varaha, is referred to, not in this verse, but in a previous verse, as Yajna Lingam, as the form that accepts all sacrifices. We are now on the second day of the new year, and it's tradition, although nobody can clearly understand why, but okay, it's New Year's, make some resolutions. I'm going to change myself. You know, I'm going to be better. And by February, most of those things are dispensed of. All right, I didn't do it. I only got half it or whatever. So we see that these types of sacrifices, austerities, penances, corrections in our behavior we execute, but unless we have the correct lingam, the form of the Lord that we're offering these changes to for service, then the likelihood of continuing with them is minimal. And even if we do, the result is minimal. So we have to understand very clearly that anything we hope to be successful in will not be successful unless we put the Lord at the center of it. And we can put the Lord at the center of our activities in so many different ways. Now, later in this chapter, we can look at this particular description in particular. We'll give a little sneak preview here, verses 35 and 36. In the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and other mantras are the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusa grass. In your eyes is that's interesting, bodily hairs are the kusa grass. If you touch the hairs of a pig, this is not a very good thing, particularly if the pig is shaking itself as animals are prone to do to get the water off, and some of that, pig water falls on you. All right, now I got to go take a bath. I'm not going to say, I'm impure if I drink some ghee, whatever it is. But here we see that from the bodily hairs of the Lord comes kusa grass. And kusa grass is an essential element when doing any type of sacrifice. When we're worshiping the deity, we sit on kusa grass mat. When we're exchanging the vows for the father giving his daughter in marriage to the future son-in-law, kusa grass is exchanged between them. When we're setting up the homa pit for the fire sacrifice, kusa grass is laid around it. So kusa grass is a very essential item for religious duties. And what is the source of that kusa grass? The hair of Lord Braha. In your eyes is the clarified butter, and in your 4 legs are the 4 kinds of fruitive activities. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. Your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice. And another plate of sacrifice is the holes in your ears. In your mouth is the Brahma plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the plate of sacrifice known as soma. And whatever you chew is known as Agnihotra. So this is a very clear understanding that all sacrifices, all offerings are meant to be enjoyed by the Lord. And how does the Lord enjoy them? Well, in any number of ways. We know very clearly when we place the foodstuff before the deity, we chant the appropriate mantras, offer the proper prayers, and the Lord has accepted it. But the food is still there. There's a wonderful story of Raghunandana and his son. He's offering the bhoga on behalf of his father, and the father returns. Okay, where's the maha? No, the Lord ate it. So the Lord is eating. There's no question. But how is he eating? He can eat through, as it says here, his tongue. He can eat through his nose, smelling the fragrance of the fresh rice with ghee on it, or the spicing put into the different vegetables, or the warm smell of butter and fruit in the halava. So by his nose, he can smell these things. By his belly, of course, because he's enjoyed all of these different offerings, and by the holes in the ears, because he's enjoyed the mantra that the devotee chants when making the offering. So all of these different things, these are ways that we see that the Lord is satisfied to accept the offerings of his devotees. Therefore, he's known as the name Yajnalingam, the form that accepts the sacrifices or the offerings of his devotees. And we tend to think, in our Western understanding, sacrifice, so this means somebody's getting an arm cut off or being thrown into the fire. Well, sacrifices are... So many of the parents, they sacrifice so much for the children. The child sacrifices so much playtime for the sake of education, so on like this. So sacrifice doesn't necessarily mean some violent intent. No, sacrifice means that I'm giving up something for a better result. Now, as a person who performs Agnihotras as often as I'm able to, this description here, it allows us to see the direct connection between the sacrifice, the receiver of the sacrifice, and the relationship to the items being used in the sacrifice. So all of this is connected. And one small example of that would be in performing an Agnihotra. We invite or we install Lord Vishnu into the fire. Different mantras, different procedures, different invocations with the mudras, different offerings, Vishnu comes into the fire. And thus Vishnu accepts through the flames as his mouth the offerings we put into the fire. So this isn't just a useless, like you light a campfire in the backyard. I'm prone to do that, sit out in the backyard in my chair reading next to a fire. And this isn't just a useless throwing wood in there and it's being burned up. No, this is mantras and particular offerings being given into the fire in which Lord Vishnu has been invited to reside temporarily. Once the fire is finished, there's another set of mantras for releasing. Okay, now you go. Someone comes to your house and you serve them very nicely, everything's finished. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice trip home or back or wherever, So once the offering is finished, then Vishnu is released in the fire. So simple connections like this that allow us to see how the Lord is directly and definitely a part of the Agnihotra process. This isn't just some ceremonial thing with no connection. It's very much a part of our lives. Now, on that subject, in this purport, Prabhupada speaks about the Vedic hymns being the glorification of the Lord and the prayers offered to the Lord. Now, just on New Year's Eve, we did the Panchashukta Homa, and we took all these different prayers, and we can look at those, how they relate to the Lord. In the Panchashukta, the first Shukta is the Purusha Shukta, and this is a very common set of prayers used. As mentioned many times, that this is a way of awakening the Lord's attention. If you begin to glorify someone, naturally they begin to pay a little bit of attention. Our false ego is that we like to hear ourselves glorified. Someone begins to glorify us, we kind of, we may very humbly bow our head and, shake, but our ears are perked up. Well, what will they say next? Oh, yes, that's true. Oh, they forgot. Oh, no, they touched that. Okay, good. So the Lord, his attention is gathered by the chanting in this Purusha Shukta. Now, this prayer is used not only to glorify the Lord, but it's actually used in every step of our deity worship. Those of you familiar with Archana know that with the offering of Padyam or Argyam or Achmaniam, each of these are offered with a particular verse from Purusha Shukta. This is all established in the different manuals for deity worship. And the verses glorify the Lord's ability to accept sacrifices through the different senses of his own form. How he accepts things when we offer Padyam, that's offering to the feet. How he accepts things through that type of offering. Argyam, offering over the sprinkling of different substances on the head, things like this. So we can see a connection in what is being done as a sacrifice, how it's being done, and what the result of it is being done. And this glorification of Purusha Shukta also glorifies the different species that are there that are produced from that form of the Lord. And as I say, the different items used for worshiping that form. So it's important that we have some understanding of this. I was just asked this morning about a particular question regarding our acharyas. And just as it's important that we understand the lives of our Vaishnava acharyas so that we understand our heritage, our connection, it's equally important that we understand these functions that we perform, these mantras that we chant. It shouldn't just be that, we can chant mantras. What is the meaning of these mantras? I'm reminded when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was 7 years old, he memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita. Now, we can easily get children to memorize anything. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur could explain each verse he had memorized. So 7 years old, memorized over 700 verses, and could explain them. This means there was an understanding of the connection. Similarly, these activities that we perform, there should be an understanding of the connection. My granddaughter Revati is in the Gurukula there in New Govardhan in Australia, and they're learning different verses, but they also learn exactly at the same time the translation of those verses. So they make a connection. Ishvara Parama Krishna, and then the connection to that translation so they know what it means. This is an important part of our maturity in Krishna consciousness. Just as Prabhupada mentions here, he refers to the Ishopanishad. It's that famous verse in the Ishopanishad, the devotee prays to the Lord, please remove your glaring effulgence. The Lord has a great effulgence. That effulgence lights up the universes, lights up the planets. It's, But the devotee asks, just remove that. I want to see your beautiful face. That glaring, okay, if we're driving where I live, and when I come home from work, it's just at the point the sun is setting, and it's right there in front of me on the road. So you drop the sun visor down and put some sunglasses on so that glaring light is not in your face, because it's a distraction. Your driving is impaired. You can't drive very carefully because that sun's here, and you're looking this way and that way, So in the same way, the devotee says, my dear Lord, this glaring effulgence, just remove that. I want to see your beautiful face. Your sesame flower-like nose. Your lotus-like eyes. So this is the Lord's, the prayer of the devotee to the Lord. To let me enter in a little more deeply, a little closer. Now, here we also get an indication that this incarnation is the personification of the Vedas. And this is where the description I was mentioning earlier, that the Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled in the breathing process by Lord Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. So Brahma inhaled from the Lord the Vedic knowledge. And then his external breathing from the nostril caused the appearance of Lord Vraha. These things you have to have some degree of faith, because we can't perceive of this in our own physical makeup. And because of that, therefore, the Bore incarnation of the Lord is considered to be the personified Vedas. The Vedas came in, the breathing went out, and boom, there was Lord Vraha. So in this way, we can see very clearly that the prayers that we offer, the glorification that we put forward, is the Vedas. And sometimes, Jayananda Prabhu was having some difficulty reciting the Gayatri, getting the mantras pronounced properly. And so he went before Prabhupada and gave it a try. And as the story goes, Prabhupada chuckled and said, you'll never get it. He said, but that's all right. Krishna understands your intention. Krishna can understand in any language. Krishna understands the language of the birds. I have 2 nice bird feeders right outside my kitchen window. When we're working at the kitchen sink, you can see the birds there, and you hear them chirping. I have no clue what they're saying. Krishna does. He knows their language. You go down the street and you hear the dogs barking at each other. I have no idea what they're saying. Krishna does. He knows their language. He knows the language of all living entities. So naturally, he understands the language of the prayers offered to him, whether they're offered in English or Sanskrit or Spanish or Russian or Hindi or whatever, because he understands all of these different languages. Still, he has a favorite, and that's the Sanskrit mantras, so we try to chant those as nicely as we're able to. One particular statement that I like, sometimes it's questioned about the need for chanting these various suktams, the prayers and mantras, Purusha Sukta, Nila Sukta, all these different things, which are, without a doubt, they're genuine mantras. We should understand that it may not be something we're as familiar with. But Prabhupada says here, wherever there is glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that Vedic mantras are being rightly vibrated. Glorification of the Lord in any language is considered Vedic mantras, in the sense that it's praising the Lord. This is why Prabhupada was not dogmatic that no, our tradition is the only religious tradition. No, there are other religious traditions, and they have their prayers. They have their glorification, their mantras, if you will. Let them chant them, you know. So this is a very nice points made in this verse. I didn't want to spend too much time on it today because we have two very amazing personalities who we're celebrating the disappearance of today. One is Srila Jiva Goswami, and one is Jagadish Pandit. Now, much has been said and spoken about on Jiva Goswami, and as far as I'm concerned, the definitive class on Jiva Goswami can be heard from Mother Sitala, which she gave in Vrindavan a couple of years ago at Jiva Goswami's Bhajan place. You can find it on her YouTube channel. It is definitely worth your time listening. I was spellbound the entire time I was sitting there listening to her. There are 5 points about Jiva Goswami's life I'd like to mention, and then I'm going to leave it at that because I want to spend most of the time on Jagadish Pandit, who's often overlooked. The first point is Srila Prabhupada's own statement about Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada said, and I quote, "My mission is to spread the glories and teachings of Jiva Goswami all over the world." This gives you an indication of how important Jiva Goswami was in our particular line and to Srila Prabhupada's purpose. Now, there are 4 very major milestones in the life of Jiva Goswami. Lord Chaitanya is coming to Ramkeli and his meeting him there. The second, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure from Ramkeli, Jiva Goswami's uncles and fathers leaving Ramkeli for Vrindavan. The third, the departure from this world of Anupam, his father, as he was returning back to Ramkeli. And the fourth, Jiva Goswami's meeting of Lord Nityananda and being taken around on Navadvip Parakram by Nityananda. Now let that sink in for a second. Your personal tour guide of Navadvip is Lord Nityananda. You're going to get some nectar. So these are 5 very specific points on your own time you can research and look at. And as someone once said, that's all I have to say about that. I'd like to discuss Jagadish Pandit. First, I want to read this quote from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. "You should all remember Sri Kavi Karnapur and all of his family members who are sincere servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You should also remember the father of Kavi Karnapur, Shivananda Sen. Always remember all those Vaishnavas who strictly follow the path of Srila Rupa Goswami and who are absorbed in bhajan. If you actually want to reside in Braj, then you must," and he emphasizes the word must, "remember all the Vaishnavas who are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami." So this is a significant quote in pointing out why we should make an effort to remember these great Vaishnavas, why we should try and understand their life. Particularly when we discussed Vaishnavacharyas, Kavi Karnapur's Gora Gunadesha Deepika is a very, very important work, as is Vishwanath Chakravarti's work, Gora Sampada. So in Kavi Karnapur's Gora Gunadesha Deepika, he recites the following verse. "The wives of the sacrificing Brahmanas in Braj," we all know that story, "took birth as Jagadish and Hiranya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked for and ate their prasad on the Ekadasi day." And then a second verse from the same book. "In Braja, there was a dancer named Chandrahasa who was very expert in the tasting of rasas. In Chaitanya Leela, that personality became Jagadish Pandit, who also took great pleasure in dancing for the Lord." Now, this is interesting because we have one personality, but we've given 2 different identities. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, as I mentioned in his book, Gona Swarupa Tattvika Chandrika, and Kavi Karnapur in this book. And when we say Kavi Karnapur, we should understand that also means Shivananda Sen. Because Kavi Karnapur's process in writing Gora Gunadesha Deepika was confirming everything with his father, Shivananda Sen, who was one of the most intimate associates of Mahaprabhu and all of Mahaprabhu's associates. So they both agree that these 2 different personalities from Krishna Lila have manifested in the form of Jagadish Pandit. Another opportunity for us to put our material considerations aside. This is actually unprecedented. But we see that it happens several times in Gaura Lila where dual personalities, separate personalities from Krishna Lila will manifest into the same form for the pastimes in Gaura Lila. Because of this, Jagadish Pandit is considered to simultaneously be Nityananda Shaka and Chaitanya Shaka. Friends, if you will, of both Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in both of their camps. And a branch both of Lord Chaitanya's tree as well as Lord Nityananda's branch on that tree of devotional service. Now, he was born in the town of Guwahati. Guwahati is located in what we now call Assam, farther eastern state of India. And his father's name was Kamalakshana Bhatta, and his mother's name was Dukini. And both of his parents, they were very, very exalted devotees of Lord Vishnu. I'm sorry, his mother wasn't Dukini, his wife was Dukini. And when his mother and his father departed from this world, very close to the same time as each other, sometimes we see this, that when a couple's been married for a very long time, and one of the two departs, quite often, very shortly after the other one goes also. All right, what's the use? You know, I've spent 50, 60, sometimes 70 years with this person, and, you know, all right, like that. So at any rate, at that time, once they departed, Jagadish Pandit and his wife Dukini, they relocated with his brothers Hiranya and Mahesh. So these are the three brothers, Jagadish, Hiranya, and Mahesh, to Sri Mayapur on the banks of the Ganga. And they built a home just near to Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata. And Jagadish Pandit, as a result, became a very close and dear friend of Jagannath Mishra. Now, of course, this indicates, you know, generally when there's some friendship, there's a similarity in ages. Your life experiences, your age-based experiences, all of these things are more easily shared when there's a similarity in age. So Jagadish Pandit and Dukini became very close with Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata, to the point they had deep parental affection for the little Nimai, equal to that of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata. As a matter of fact, Jagadish Pandit's wife Dukini was not only like a mother, but she was also a wet nurse to Nimai Pandit from time to time. Now, the ladies all know, but some of the men may not know. Wet nurse means that someone besides the mother is providing breast milk for the baby. This is not such a common thing, but it's an interesting concept. You know, this not always is the woman producing breast milk, lactating as the word is, due to having their own children, sometimes out of motherly affection. We see particularly in these different pastimes of the Lord, this happens and the woman will produce. So she was also serving Sachi Mata by providing the service if Sachi Mata was not available to take care of little Nimai in this way. Now, Nimai, the son of Sachi, of course, we know is none other than the son of Jasoda, the Supreme Personality of Krishna. And it's not possible for anyone other than his intimate associate, his eternal associate, to have such a good fortune to treat him in this way as a son. Prabhupada says that many religions, God is the Father, we're the Son, my dear Father, please give us our daily bread, please provide us. What is the duty of the Father? To provide everything the son, the child needs, right? You know, whatever it is, you know, new clothes for school, new books for school, you know, birthday presents, Christmas presents, a house to live, all these things, it's all provided by the Father. Therefore, in the Vaishnava tradition, we want to become the Father, so that we're providing that service to Krishna. This is the beauty of this. Now, Mahaprabhu wanted to make an example of just how dear Jagadish and Dukini were to him. And so what he did was, Mahaprabhu was the father of the Sankirtan movement. And even as a child, he would often trick people into chanting the holy names. We know the story. He'd be crying and the ladies would chant, and then he'd stop, and they'd stop chanting, and he'd start crying again, and they'd start chanting, and then he'd stop, and like that, So Sachi Mata and all of her neighborhood ladies, they would clap their hands and do kirtan, and in this way the Lord kind of tricked them in this way. Now, one Ekadasi day, Nimai was crying, and the kirtan of Mother Sachi and the ladies was not doing anything to abate his crying. Now, of course, we know as Mahaprabhu, as Nimai got older, he became Mahaprabhu, that one of his requests, basically we can say the only request he made of Sachimatu, was to follow Ekadasi. Now, sometimes we don't always enthusiastically and with great love embrace Ekadasi. We accept it as, all right, I got to do Ekadasi today. Some of us, I'm not mentioning any names, but so at any rate, but this day was Ekadasi. And he was crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. So Jagannath Mishra, Sachimata and her friends couldn't stop him from crying. So Jagannath Mishra, he asked him, what is it you want, my child? What do you want? And this is quite common. If a child is crying, and you try to pacify them, it doesn't work. Here, let me give you your pacifier. No, that doesn't do it. Okay, here's a toy. No, what do you want? That's what you ask the child. What do you want? What will stop you from crying? So Nimai Pandit very clearly answered his father. Today, in the house of Jagannath Mishra, they have made very nice rice offering to Lord Vishnu. I want some of that prasad. So if you give me some of that prasadam, then I will stop crying. Now, Jagannath Mishra was amazed on multiple levels. First of all, it's Ekadasi. How can I provide the child, What was it Prabhu said? Younger than 9, older than 90, you don't have to follow Ekadasi, or younger than 8, older than 80, whatever it is. There's a popular Prabhupada said on that. But, so, and secondly, my little Nimai's here in the house. How does he know that a couple of doors down at the home of Jagadish Pandit and Dukini, they're offering some nice rice prasad to Lord Vishnu? Lord Vishnu, of course, means the Shalagam Shila. Every Brahmin had the Shalagam Shila in their home and would worship, Shalagram Vishnu is not required to follow Ekadasi. Ekadasi is for our benefit. Certain restrictions are there. And we still offer grains. Just like sometimes on Ekadasi, you can try very carefully to plan to be here when the 7 o'clock offering comes off, because no one's taking all the glubshamans, and maybe you'll be fortunate. You can stash them for the following day. Of course, Mahaprabhu didn't like his renunciate disciples to do so, who was at Gadadhar. Mahaprabhu, they would stop somewhere, and he wanted some tambu after his meal. Gadadhar went around the town, found some haritaki. Mahaprabhu was given this haritaki, but Gadadhar was very intelligent. I should save some. He's probably going to ask for this again, so let me have backup stash. So the next day, sure enough, Mahaprabhu, haritaki? Oh, yes, I have. No. Wait a minute. Previously, you had to go and search for it. Today, you had it right there. Oh, I have saved for you. Oh, you're saving? All right. So you should stay here. You shouldn't take the role of a renunciate anymore. You stay here and stock things and take care of these deities. So, in this way, some activity, So at any rate, Jagannath Mishra was wondering, how is this possible? So he's knowing these things are going on. So, but Gauranga's eternal associate is Jagadish Pandit. And Jagadish Pandit, he understood that this little Nimai is actually Gopal. Some of the associates of the Lord during that time, they understood his real identity. So Jagannath Mishra, he went to Jagadish's house, and very hesitantly he requested this, because it's grains on Ekadasi, Vaishnavas. I remember when my father was in charge of one of the leadership positions in the International Lions Club, and they had their meeting in Mumbai. And he met many of our life members who were also Lions Club members, and one of them was a Bengali man who became a good friend of his, Tulsi something, was his name. And so when he came to find out that my father's son, myself, was within Iskcon, he was very respectful. He said, oh, that means certain days he doesn't eat grains, certain days, he knew these traditions, of course. My father was quite surprised. So this is, Ekadasi is an accepted thing. So Jagannath Mishra was a little bit hesitant like this. But, as I mentioned, Jagadish, he understood the real story. So he gave the entire offering. What are they going to keep it for? They can't eat it. It's Ekadasi. So he gave the entire offering. And Jagannath Mishra took that offering, took it back home, gave it to little Nimai. And when he gave it to Nimai, he immediately stopped crying. You can imagine this crying's been going on for, probably 30 minutes by this point, maybe longer. Depends on how long it took to walk there and back and how long it was crying. And with due respect, those of us that are parents know that there's very few things as grating on the nerves as a child crying endlessly that you can't stop from crying. I see a few smiles in the audience of people that have experienced that. So immediately upon receiving this Mahaprasad from Jagannath Mishra's offering to his deity, you might stop crying. He was very, very, very happy. Now, while doing this and eating this prasadam, he shared it with his friends that happened to be there. His other little boyfriends, they were around, and so they all ate together. While he was eating, in an external manifestation, he showed his form as Balagopal with the peacock feather and a bluish hue to Hiranya and Jagadish in their home. So even more amazing that this can be done in such a way like this, So this is all described in the Garanga Champu in chapter 20, a very, very detailed explanation. It says, now, Jagadish Pandit and Hiranya, they're both branches of Mahaprabhu's tree, and the Lord gave them this mercy, even though he was a very small child. Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Adi Leela 10th chapter goes into detail describing this pastime there, and how, because it is of his deep love for his devotee, and Chaitanya Charitamrita describes how, because of that love he received from the Lord, Jagadish Pandit can purify the entire universe. Now, this is important for us to understand. There are various personalities in the associates of Mahaprabhu that are quite noteworthy. Some just by remembering them, Parameshwar Thakur, just by saying their name, one can develop love for God. And Jagadish Pandit, by this connection with Mahaprabhu, is able to purify the entire universe. So why should we not want to be sure we're familiar with these pastimes of these devotees? It was equally dear to Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda actually considered Jagadish to be his life and soul. So much so that in the Panihati festival, Lord Nityananda brought Jagadish Pandit there to make sure he was also present there. Now, before Mahaprabhu took sannyas, he ordered Jagadish, you relocate to Alachua, and you preach Krishna consciousness and the religious practice of the age, Harinam Sankirtan, all throughout Jagannath Puri. So in this way, he went there, but he understood in his own heart that the son of Nanda, Sri Krishna, and the son of Jagannath Mishra, Sri Gaurasunda, are the same as Sri Jagannath himself. So he understood these three personalities to be one and the same. So when he arrived in Puri, he went for Jagannath's darshan and immediately melted in love for Lord Jagannath, seeing him in this way. Now, after some time, it was instructed that he should return to Bengal. But by this point, he had developed great affection for Lord Jagannath. We use the term Ishtadev, the deity of one's heart. So Jagannath had become his Ishtadev. He just had so much love for him. And So he thought, how is this possible? Thousands and thousands of people come on pilgrimage every day to Jagannath Puri. They all take darshan of Lord Jagannath. But how many of them become overwhelmed with that attachment to Lord Jagannath? So as he was preparing for this departure, he was crying in separation. And as he was crying in this way, Jagannath Dev appeared to him in a dream and told him, you take my Vigraha with you and you serve me in that form. Now, those of you that have been to Jagannath Puri, or that everyone's aware, you can get a Jagannath deity very easily. Puri, so many different shops have. But this was not going to be like that. Simultaneously, in this dream to Jagadish Pandit, the Lord appeared to the king of Orissa and ordered the king that at the time of Navakalevra, this is when the deity of Jagannath is changed, that outgoing deity should be given as prasad to Jagannath Mishra. It's a very interesting process. When the deity of in the heart of Jagannath, in his chest cavity, is a shalagram shila that's kept there, covered in sandalwood paste. And at the time of transfer, the eldest Brahmin in the community is blindfolded, and he takes that shalagram out and places it into the new Jagannath deity. Then this old Jagannath deity is taken and generally placed into a tank of water in the ground, because the water will eventually dissolve the wooden form over the course of time, and boom, back into the elements. That's the general process. But in this circumstance, Jagannath instructed both Jagadish Pandit and the king Rusa, no, you give this deity as prasad to Jagadish Pandit. So King of Puri, Maharaj, was very, very ecstatic to do this. He thought this was very, very wonderful. So this Samadhista Vigraha, as it's called, was given to Jagadish. Now, Jagadish prayed to Lord Jagannath, how is it going to be possible? I'm going to carry you in this form all the way back to Bengal. And we're not talking little Jagannath deities here like we have in our home. We're talking big, huge, and made of solid wood. I don't know how many of you have ever done any tree work, but just to lift one branch of a tree that's fallen in the yard is so heavy. So what to speak? I cut some for the borders on my fire in my backyard. I cut some 36-inch pieces of a good-sized log. I almost broke my back lifting those. What to speak of this form of Jagannath? So he prayed, how am I going to transport you all the way back to... So Jagannath appeared to him. He said, don't worry. For you, I'll become as light as a piece of cork. And you can construct a tripod staff and attach me to that and carry me back. So this is what he did. Jagannath in that form became very, very light. He placed him on this tripod staff, bound him to that, and took him back to Bengal. He enlisted the aid of two Brahmins, because it's a little much for one person to do all that distance. And they took turns carrying Jagannath back to Bengal. Now they got as far as Jasahara. Now Jasahara is on the banks of the Ganga, not quite all the way into Navadvip, of course. Now, Jagadish left Jagannath with these two Brahmins, and then he went to take his bath in the Ganga. And when he departed to take his bath, suddenly the two Brahmins found that Jagannath had again become very heavy. And they were no longer able to easily move him. Matter of fact, they weren't able to move him at all, just the two of them. You've seen in the pictures of Rath Yatra, there's 25 Brahmins carrying Jagannath, So just the two, they couldn't. So when Jagadish returned from having taken his bath, he saw Lord Jagannath sitting on the ground, and he realized this is where the Lord wants to stay. So they built and established a temple right there at that spot. Now this place was known as Chakdaha, and it's a historical site. During the Puranic age, it was known as a place of great pilgrimage. Pradyumna, the son of Krishna, killed the demon Sambar there in Dwapara Yuga. So it's also sometimes referred to as Pradyumna Nagara. And when Bhagirati brought the Ganges down in order to save his dynasty, he buried the wheel of his chariot there. So thus the place became known as Chakradaha, which is over the course of time became Chakdaha. So when the local people heard that Jagannath had come to Chakdaha, Jasahara, as they call it nowadays, they all flocked there. Everyone came to get the darshan. And so this was how Jagadish decided to stay there, which is now where his temple and home can be found, as opposed to being back in Mayapur. And of course, who came to visit there? Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu both came and visited this temple on 2 different occasions, describes in the Chaitanya literatures. And so they held big festival there, big Sankirtan, big prasadam distribution, like this. And as the Lord was about to leave to continue on to Puri, Dukini, Jagadish's wife, began to cry and cry and cry and cry. Such a great feeling of separation of the Lord leaving that Mahaprabhu manifested a Gaur Gopal deity and presented that to her. And that Gaur Gopal deity is still worshipped in that temple next to Jagannath. So there's just a few pastimes of Jagadish Pandit. We can see how important of an associate he is to the Lord and why it is necessary for us to know about him. Jiva Goswami we know a lot about, but as I say, I encourage everyone to listen to Mother Sitala's class on him. And we'll finish there for today. I thank you very much. I have another engagement, so I'm going to pass on the questions. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jiva Goswami ki jai. Jagdish Pandit ki jai. Gaur Premanande.